I still remember the way the crystal glasses caught the light that night, reflecting gold and white across the ballroom like everything in the room was polished to hide the truth underneath. My parents' 50th wedding anniversary was supposed to be a celebration of love, sacrifice, and family. At least, that's what the invitation said. But families like ours didn't celebrate love. We celebrated appearances. The venue was expensive. Too expensive for a family that had spent most of my life reminding me how much of a burden I was. Chandeliers hung low, soft music floated through the air, and guests dressed like they were attending an awards gala instead of an anniversary. I stood near the back, adjusting the sleeves of a dress I'd bought myself, feeling like an unpaid extra in someone else's movie. My sister, Claire, was already working the room. Claire had always been the star. Perfect grades, perfect smile, perfect timing. She had mastered the art of saying cruel things in a sweet voice so no one ever blamed her for the damage. She moved from table to table, laughing loudly, touching shoulders, reminding everyone, without saying it directly, that she was the successful one. And I was not. At least, that was the story she'd told for years. Our parents sat at the head table, glowing with pride. Not for both of us, just for her. I watched my mother adjust Claire's hair like she was still a child, whispering something that made her laugh. My father clapped a little too hard when Claire told a story about her job, her apartment, her busy life. No one asked me anything. No one ever did. I had learned long ago how to disappear in plain sight. When you grow up being called the slow one, the sensitive one, or worse, the one who never quite made it, you learn that silence is safer than defense. Silence doesn't give people ammunition. Still, something about that night felt different. The room buzzed with expectation, like everyone was waiting for a moment they could laugh about later. Then Claire picked up the microphone. The clink of her glass echoed through the room, sharp and deliberate. Conversations died instantly. She smiled, that same practiced smile she'd used her whole life, and looked straight at our parents. "Can we all have a moment?" she said sweetly. Applause broke out before she'd even finished the sentence. I felt my stomach tighten. She raised her glass higher. "Tonight is about Mom and Dad. 50 years of love, patience, and, let's be honest, support." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Claire turned slightly, just enough so everyone could see me in her peripheral vision. "Especially the kind of support that lasts a lifetime," she continued. "So let's all applaud Mom and Dad for still supporting a 30-year-old failure." The word hit the room like a dropped plate. For half a second, there was silence. Then laughter exploded, loud, surprised, uncomfortable laughter that people use when they don't want to be the odd one out. Heads turned. Every single pair of eyes landed on me. My mother didn't stop her. My father didn't correct her. They smiled. I stood there, my hands shaking around my glass, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. 100 memories rushed back at once. Being told not to aim too high, being compared to Claire at every holiday, being reminded how much easier life would be if I were more like her. I could have cried. I could have walked out. I could have finally snapped. Instead, I breathed in slowly. Then I smiled. The laughter faded when people realized I wasn't reacting the way they expected. I lifted my own glass, just as Claire had done, and took one calm step forward. "I just want to say thank you," I said, my voice steady enough to surprise even me. Whispers fluttered through the room. "Thank you," I continued, "for showing me exactly who you all are." Claire's smile faltered, just a fraction. I raised my glass toward my parents. "Congratulations on 50 years, I said warmly. "That kind of commitment is rare." I took a sip, then I sat back down. No confrontation. No explanation. No drama. People didn't know what to do with that. The moment passed awkwardly, the music resumed, and conversations restarted, but something had shifted. I could feel it. Claire avoided my eyes for the rest of the night, and my mother kept glancing at me like she was trying to read a language she'd never bothered to learn. They thought it was over. They thought my silence meant weakness. They had no idea that night wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. Because while they were busy laughing, they had forgotten something important. I had stopped asking for their approval years ago. And I had been building something they never bothered to notice. Something that was about to walk straight back into their lives, loud enough to be impossible to ignore. The rest of the night passed the way storms do before they break, quiet on the surface, violent underneath. People avoided me after that toast. Not out of kindness, but discomfort. It's amazing how fast laughter turns into fear when a joke doesn't land the way people expect. I could feel it in the way conversations stopped when I walked past, in the way smiles became tight and forced. Claire disappeared for a while. I knew that look too, the one she wore when things didn't go according to plan. She had expected tears. Or anger. Or at least embarrassment. What she got was control. When the event finally ended, my parents hugged everyone goodbye like nothing had happened. When it was my turn, my mother leaned in and whispered, "You didn't have to make it awkward." I almost laughed. "I didn't," I replied. "You did." Her face hardened. My father said nothing. He never did when silence was easier. I left without another word. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't replay the insult in my head. I didn't draft imaginary arguments in the shower like I used to when I was younger. Instead, I opened my laptop. The glow of the screen felt grounding, familiar, like stepping into a room where I finally belonged. While my family believed I had never figured life out, I had been quietly building a world they didn't understand and never bothered to ask about. 3 years earlier, I had taken a job none of them respected. Remote. Flexible. Unstable, according to Claire. She had laughed when I told her the company name. "You still doing those little projects?" she'd asked. I hadn't corrected her. That job had turned into a partnership. That partnership had turned into equity. And that equity had turned into influence. The company had grown fast, faster than anyone predicted. By the time my name started appearing in rooms that mattered, I had already learned something critical: power works best when it's quiet. I scrolled through emails from earlier that day. One stood out. Board meeting, Monday, 9 a.m. Mandatory attendance. The location made me pause. It was the same building where Claire worked. Same floor. Same company. I leaned back in my chair, finally letting myself smile, not the polite smile I'd worn all evening, but a real one. Because the truth was, Claire's success wasn't separate from mine. It was standing on it. She didn't know that the company she bragged about at every family gathering, the one she claimed was set for massive growth, had recently undergone a quiet restructuring. She didn't know who had approved it. And she definitely didn't know who had final authority now. Monday came faster than expected. I dressed simply. No designer labels. No flashy accessories. I had learned long ago that people underestimate what doesn't announce itself. When I walked into the building, no one stopped me. Security nodded, assuming I was staff. That was fine. The elevator ride felt long. Familiar faces stepped in and out, including Claire's coworker Mark, who barely glanced at me. He had once mistaken me for an intern at a family dinner. I didn't correct him either. The conference room was already filling when I arrived. Claire sat near the front, laughing with her manager, completely at ease. She hadn't seen me yet. The board members entered one by one, conversations quieting as laptops opened and folders slid across the table. The air shifted, professional, focused, serious. Then the chairman stood. "Before we begin," he said, "I'd like to introduce someone new." Claire straightened in her chair, clearly expecting another executive announcement. "This company has recently welcomed a new senior partner," he continued. "Someone who has been instrumental behind the scenes for quite some time." My name appeared on the screen. Not my first name. Not my last. Just the title. Senior partner. Board authority. I stood. The sound of Claire's chair scraping against the floor echoed through the room. Her face drained of color as she stared at me like she was trying to solve a math problem she had never learned how to do. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I met her eyes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. The chairman paused, smiling. Your colleague. The word hung in the air like a verdict. I took my seat at the table. No speech. No explanation. No revenge monologue. Just presence. The meeting moved on, but Claire didn't hear a word of it. Her hands trembled. Her confidence, so carefully built on comparison, crumbled in real time. Because now she understood something terrifying. Everything she thought she knew about me was wrong. And worse. She had humiliated the wrong person. The meeting ended in silence. People filed out one by one, avoiding eye contact with Claire. No one congratulated her. No one joked. No one explained anything to her. The room that had once been her stage had turned into a courtroom, and she was the only one without a defense. She waited until everyone else was gone before she finally spoke. You did this on purpose, she said, her voice shaking. I closed my laptop calmly. No, I replied. I did this quietly. You did the rest. She followed me out of the room, her heels clicking faster than usual. You humiliated me, she hissed in the hallway. I stopped walking. Claire, I said, turning to face her, you humiliated me first. I just didn't stop you. That was the moment it finally hit her, not just that I had power, but that I had always had restraint. And restraint, when removed, feels like punishment. By the end of the week, changes began rolling through the company. Subtle at first. A reassignment here. A project transfer there. Claire's authority shrank quietly, the same way mine had once been ignored. She wasn't fired. That would have been dramatic. Instead, she was sidelined, no longer central, no longer praised, no longer protected. At home, things unraveled faster. My parents called that Sunday. My mother cried. My father sounded tired in a way I had never heard before. Why didn't you tell us? My mother asked. I paused before answering. You never asked. There was silence on the line. The next family dinner was smaller. No speeches. No jokes. No raised glasses. Claire didn't attend. She had claimed she was too busy, but we all knew better. My father finally spoke what no one else would. We didn't see you, he said quietly. I nodded. I know. That was it. No yelling. No dramatic forgiveness. Just truth, laid bare. Over the next few months, life shifted. Not in a flashy way, but in a permanent one. I moved into a place I loved, not one I had to justify. I stopped shrinking my accomplishments to make others comfortable. I stopped explaining myself to people who had already decided who I was. Claire eventually reached out. Her message was short. I didn't know you were capable of that. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. I didn't need you to. I never cut my family off. I didn't have to. Distance formed naturally when respect finally arrived too late. And sometimes, late respect feels worse than no respect at all. At the next Thanksgiving, there was no shouting. No insults. No lawyer arriving at the door. Just quiet. And this time, the silence didn't belong to me. It belonged to the people who had finally realized. The person they mocked had never been behind them. They were standing on her shadow the entire time.